So yeah, apparently I missed one other lie that white folks tell themselves about the history of Canada and how they got here. I saw dozens of comments on the part one of this video along the lines of, quote, "My ancestors built this great country and worked their fingers to the bone to make it what it is today." All right, so let's clear some things up, folks. Your ancestors' hard work and determination in settling here is a part of Canada's history, but it's only one part of the story. That labor took place on lands that were taken, often violently, from Indigenous peoples who had lived there for millennia. The story of European settlement often leaves out the perspective of the people who are already here and whose lands, resources, and very way of life were disrupted to make way for that settlement. Before European arrival, Indigenous peoples were sovereign nations. Their title to the land was recognized by early European powers and even in early treaties, but this was systematically undermined and ignored by the Canadian state over time. Recognizing that Canada was built on Indigenous land is about acknowledging the prior sovereignty and inherent rights of Indigenous nations, not just acknowledging their presence. European claims to the land were based on racist and colonial legal principles, like the Doctrine of Discovery, which assumed Indigenous peoples had no right to their own territories. So, they stole the land and forced Indigenous peoples to submit to colonial policies, such as the residential school system, which was intended to destroy Indigenous cultures and make assimilation easier. There are numerous instances of fraud and coercion as well, such as the Métis scrip system, where land promises were often unfulfilled or manipulated. The Indian Act was used to control First Nations people and their territory, which further enabled colonial settlement. Colonization is not ancient history, folks. It is an ongoing process that continues to affect Indigenous peoples through systematic discrimination, marginalization, and the continued denial of their land rights. So the prosperity enjoyed by many Canadians today is directly tied to the historical and ongoing dispossession of Indigenous lands and resources. Like the intergenerational wealth handed down from the 100 to 160 acres European immigrants to Canada received. Land that today is worth between $3,000 and $20,000 an acre, depending on where it is. The water, minerals, and other natural resources taken from Indigenous peoples and sold for profit by corporations and used to build our homes, our industries, our economy, our governments between then and now. All this can be traced back to the treaties. It's critical that we stop lying to ourselves about this and realize it's not ancient history. The past indeed shaped the present. And the harm to Indigenous communities is not a historical issue, but an ongoing one. Trauma from events like residential schools and the forced removal of children from their families has been passed down through generations. It affects the health and well-being of Indigenous peoples today. Intergenerational trauma manifests in high rates of suicide, substance abuse, and other mental health challenges in Indigenous communities. Denying history allows these cycles of trauma to continue without being addressed. This isn't about blaming individuals today. It's about recognizing how power and privilege were built, acknowledging the ongoing effects, and working towards a more just future. If we ignore that, we're not really learning or growing. Also, standing up for others doesn't mean attacking white people. It means creating fairness for everyone. True reconciliation requires confronting this painful truth. Descendants of European immigrants to Canada owe it to themselves to read and understand the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which details the history and legacy of residential schools and colonialism in Canada. And to stop deflecting by saying, well, that was then, this is now, and I didn't steal any land, I'm not racist, why should I be responsible for something I didn't do? Well, as I said above, Non-Indigenous people benefit from the systems and infrastructure such as land, laws, and institutions. These were established through the dispossession and assimilation of Indigenous peoples. Even without personally committing a wrong, one benefits from its outcome. That's why. Peace out. And if you're not already following me, you should. It's going to be a ride.